On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, I have 15-year NFL veteran quarterback Gus Frerotte on the show as we talk about his current endeavors with his current podcast, Huddle Up with Gus on radio.com, and what he's doing with the Energy Innovation Center in Pittsburgh regarding to eSports and other things. We talk about the state of quarterback play in the NFL. He gives me his opinion on the XFL and if it can last. And then we switch to some hockey and talk about some Sydney Crosby and Pittsburgh Penguins stuff. So without any further ado, enjoy the show. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a guy that, when I was growing up and younger, gave me a lot of entertaining moments watching football. He was someone that I specifically remember watching all the time, being a kid that grew up in the New York, New Jersey area. My favorite team was the Jets, but obviously paid attention to the Giants. And this was a guy that I saw give the Giants some fits sometimes when he was playing with the Redskins. He's a 15-year NFL veteran quarterback. He's played for the Redskins, Lions, Broncos, Bengals, Vikings, Dolphins, Rams. He's been all around pretty damn good everywhere he went. He's currently a high school coach and entrepreneur, has a weekly podcast called Huddle Up with Gus through radio.com. He's working with the Energy Innovation Center in Pittsburgh to lead their eSports initiative, which I'm super interested about. We're going to talk about that. And he's married to his wife, Ann, for 25 years and has 3 kids, Abby, Gunnar, and Gabe. Abby's at UPenn Veterinarian School. Gunnar is a senior at William & Mary, and Gabe is a junior at the University of Delaware. He's a proud dad, obviously. He is Gus Frerotte. Gus, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Alex. How are you tonight?
Good. I really do appreciate you agreeing to come on. And you're probably not aware of this. You are the first, big-time NFL veteran that I've had on the show. So you're a breakthrough. You are a first, Gus.
That's good. It's going to lead to way better NFL veterans than me. So I'm going to break the ice for you.
I don't know if you could say, I wouldn't downplay yourself. You played a lot of good football, well over 100 touchdowns, I think 21,000 yards plus in the league, 15 years of playing NFL football. And in your final year, you had one of your better years in Minnesota statistically. I don't know if you could say there's a lot better. You had a pretty damn good career in the NFL.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every minute of it. Sometimes traveling with my family and going from city to city is tough. But, now I have somebody commiserate with. One of my really good friends is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And he's bounced around. He actually beat my record. He's on 8 different teams. I was only on 7. So we commiserate together about all the places we drag our families around the country. But we wouldn't change it for anything.
So we're going to talk more about your NFL playing a little bit, but I want to first give you an opportunity to talk about what you're going on currently, starting with the podcast, Huddle Up with Gus, on radio.com, distributed everywhere you can find the podcast. What exactly is Huddle Up with Gus? Tell everyone, what you're trying to accomplish, what you do on that podcast.
Well, I kind of started the same way that you started yours. It was a passion project. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I moved back here in 2013. I got really tired of all the local sports stations. They weren't really giving me what I wanted out of a sports station. And so what I did,
Gus, they're the Homer stations. They're tough sometimes.
Yeah, and it wasn't everything that I wanted in that. And I said, well, why can't I do this myself? And so I got my good buddy Dave, who we've been friends since I was in my second year at the Washington Redskins. So we've been friends for a long time. Our wives graduated high school together, so they've been friends for a long time. And we kind of always complained about it. And so we said, let's do something different. And we knew podcasting was getting big. And so we said, let's go on. Let's get guests on, which I have a good connection to a lot of people. And, let's talk something different. Let's find out their story, their history. And so really what Huddle Up is about is asking these guests, what was the first thing that really made you fall in love with sports? And, so many guests are similar. A lot have great stories. And a lot of people remember that first time that really they fell in love with sports. And it's really interesting to hear because a lot of times the podcast, the guests will, sometimes they'll be short. They don't really want to be there and things like that. But when I start taking them back to when they were a kid, it's just like the floodgates open up. And it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of great stories. We just interviewed Merrill Hodge last week, and he told us about when he was growing up. He was a cowboy. He rode bareback horses, and he used to go farm to farm catching gophers, and he could sell gopher tails after, he would do what he had to do with them. But he would go to the local store, and he could sell gopher tails for 25 cents a tail. And I'm like, have you ever told that story? And he said, I don't know if I ever have. I said, well, it's out there now.
That's awesome. And yeah, people definitely let their hair down on podcasts. That's a fact that when you get them going, everyone just likes to let their hair down because it's so much of a looser environment.
Well, it's an environment which I really found out about podcasting. It's an environment that, you can be who you are. There's no restrictions. There's nobody telling you can't say this, you can't do that. And that's why podcasting is getting so big, is that there's nobody telling you like, well, we won't put that on the air. Podcasting is just a free and open market that you can go and talk about whatever passion you have and explain it to everyone any way you want. And, hopefully you can get some followers.
Yep, and that's always a good goal. And you definitely have some good connections. Obviously, 15 years in the NFL, played with a lot of great players who we'll talk about a little bit more in your career in a little bit. I also want to touch on what you're doing as well with the Energy Innovation Center in Pittsburgh, the eSports initiative, which is something that I've had a few people on to talk about eSports, and I legitimately believe that in a different way, the people that participate in eSports are athletes. They train their tails off. They get better at their craft, and it takes talent to be good at video games like that. What exactly are you doing over there with the center?
Well, the Energy Innovation Center started out as a place in 2015 of really trying to figure out to make the building it's an old trade school, and its energy efficiency was terrible. They had two boilers that were running 165,000 square feet, and the only way to heat the building is to turn the switch on, and that was it. Jesus. So what these guys did, Bob Meter, Bill Miller, they took it over. They said, all right, we can make this better. So they are now one of the, if you know the term LEED in energy efficiency, they are one of the top buildings in the country, where they took this massive old building, and they lowered their energy efficiency or raised it by 85%.
Wow.
So what used to cost like so much a month to heat the place, which I think it was like 65, 70,000. Now it's like $2,000, so they really took the initiative to do that. And from that, they brought in companies. There's 190 companies part of the Energy Innovation Center. And what they do is they have these companies, the whole building is a teaching atmosphere. So nothing is closed off. Everything is teachable. They brought in major companies, and what they said is, we want you to collaborate. We don't want you to compete. We want you to collaborate, and also in a way you're competing. And most of the times people will say, okay, we're going to put one type of product in here, and then that's it. Well, they said, we're going to do it a different way. We're going to have all these products in here. We're going to have all these companies in here. We're going to get them to collaborate. And then what they do is they train around 300 people a year, and these companies write the curriculum, and people without jobs, people that are heads of households that don't have jobs, veterans can come in, take these classes that these companies write the curriculum for, and then in 6 to 9 weeks go out and get a nice paying job around $23 an hour, where they really didn't have the opportunity before. And so with the eSports initiative, from the beginning, I fell in love with this place, and I really love, because I grew up blue collar. My dad was a mill guy, and I understand all the philosophy of all that. And not everybody's going to go to college. And so what I really loved about it was I can be a part of a building. They want to start new and different trades and job opportunities, and eSports is that. Mm-hmm. They want to get into eSports. Think of it as the hook is bringing the kids in, playing the games, participating in events and tournaments. But then we're also going to educate them on all of the jobs that are out there. We're going to teach them about how important it is to be healthy and take care of yourself, because we know a lot of these kids don't do that. And, we want to show them all of the other opportunities. It's no different than, just like you said, football. When I was a kid growing up, they said, okay, what's the best you can do in football? Well, I can play in the NFL. Well, that's like 1% that gets there.
Yep.
Well, then, all right, I get to go to college. There's, it's like 16 or 20% to get there, and I can play in high school. So it's the same thing in esports. Some kids only play up through high school and then just do recreationally the rest of their life. Some kids get to go to college, where there are over 200 colleges giving full scholarships now for esports. And then some kids will go on and be a pro. And so they have to learn all the responsibilities that come with that. And, that's what we want to do. In Pittsburgh, there's no community for esports. There's no cafes. There's no place to socialize. And so the Energy Innovation Center, with the model they already have, it fits well in there. And so I'll be leading that we can have a safe place for kids, and where anybody from any background, not just the rich kids who can afford these computers and these games, but from any background can come and be safe, play these games, learn about the opportunities, and you never know when you're going to find the next diamond in the rough.
That's just a really, really cool center in general, aside from the esports stuff, which is awesome, just everything they do there. And it's kind of interesting that you talked about how they kind of change themselves over to become energy efficient and things like that. So my 9-to-5 job is I'm a union insulator. So I would have been a big part of whatever project is going on over there, because insulation is a massive part for the whole entire getting things to be green and energy efficient. So I find that to be really cool. That's a small world there that I guarantee there was a whole bunch of different piping and stuff in there and a whole bunch of different duct work that people like me would have wanted insulated. So it gave work to a lot of blue-collar guys. You would know that
everything is insulated up to not just national standards, but international standards. So every pipe is color-coded, so you know exactly what it is.
And just in a place today that was color-coded doing the pipe work.
Yeah, and so, and the thing about it is back in the day when you went into a union, you went into a trade, you learned that one trade. So if you wanted to be a plumber, you just learned plumbing, and then if you didn't like it after a year, you were kind of stuck. You had to go back and learn. So what the Energy Innovation Center did is they took all the trades. They brought them all together and said, look, we don't want you just to teach one skill. We want you to teach all the skills so these guys can go through classes and classes, and then they can make a career out of it instead of just guessing on what they want to do. And so we have every trade in there. Every union is part of the Energy Innovation Center, and they have master technicians teaching all of these trades. And every year we graduate around 300 kids.
That's fantastic. We need to get one of these in every single major city in every single state, because I feel like it would just make, there's the big push to get back to the vocational movement, because not everyone goes to college, like you said. So the vocational movement is great. And having something like this where if you want to get into a union and you think you want to be a steam fitter, you could go take these classes. Oh, I don't like steam fitting, but I might like carpentry. And that's cool that they get a taste of everything. It's a giant wood shop home ec, which is fantastic. And a second thing on esports, I'm hoping that you're trying to change the mind of a lot of older people, which their whole entire thing is, why would you watch someone play video games and if you can do it yourself? Well, it's the same thing. Why would you watch people play football if you can go outside and throw a football yourself? Because they're really good at it. And I'm entertained and you're entertained by talent. And that's exactly what it is. I hope we're trying to change that mold in esports where people are just kind of like, well, it's dumb because you could do the same thing.
Well, you got to understand when people that are older, even myself, I mean, my kids have played it, so I kind of understand it. But people that are older than me, they grew up playing baseball and going outside and playing wiffle ball and backyard football. And there were the certain sports that you played. Even when I grew up, we didn't even have soccer or lacrosse or any of that stuff in our high school. So if you think about it, the kids today are growing up totally different. They're growing up with this. This is what they understand and know. And if you have an opportunity to go watch the best that's ever played a certain thing, you want to do that. And I think it's even better that now so many kids are good at so many different games, whether it's a console game or it's a computer game or even like a Switch, that, people want to go watch them. My son and I were flipping through the channels the other night. I think it was on TNT. These guys were competing on their phones.
Yeah.
There was a game. Yeah. And a lot of people are watching it, and we want to be the side that we want to be a safe place for the kids to come. But then we also want to be the lab where they say, okay, there's other opportunities. We want to be the place where companies can come and see their future employees, because you never know a kid that's good in esports, but he's good in math or biology or whatever. These companies, that's their next employees. And if they can catch them early, I mean, usually they don't see them until they're out of college. So now it's an opportunity to come and watch these kids grow. If they really like them, give them scholarships and different things like that. So we really want to make it an all-encompassing environment that's sustainable and not just a one-off event or experience.
Yep, that's great. Gus, I'm sold. This needs to be everywhere. We need to expand this. It's just such a cool thing, and it's a great alternative.
We did partner with a group out of California. So they'll be the West Coast side of this. We'll be the East Coast side, and then they're currently talking with a group in Dallas, Fort Worth. So I think it's something that can expand. How many kids really know how bad their eyesight gets by playing computer games all day, or what their brain performance is doing, or, how their hearing is. All of a sudden, they've been playing for 10 years and they're 22 years old, and they're going, God, I can't hear anymore, or my vision is terrible. But that's what we want to give the kids, and opportunities. And then also with that is educate the parents. So many parents have no idea what's going on. And then they're really surprised when their son or daughter wins a tournament and they win $500. So there's a lot of good things that can happen. We want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, morally, ethically, and we're giving the kids every opportunity to see what's all involved in esports.
That's great. It's an initiative that I'm all in on, and that's really cool. But we are going to jump into our next topic. You played football for 15 years, quarterback at the highest level of play that there is. I'm curious how you feel right now about the current level of quarterback play in the NFL. You see the guys like the Patty Mahomes, the Deshaun Watson, the Russell Wilson, even Lamar Jackson. How do they kind of compare to when you were playing and the guys that you played with?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, because somebody asked me the other day about, I did a show in Minnesota, and we mostly talked about Kirk Cousins. And, can the Vikings win without a mobile quarterback? And Kirk's not the most mobile guy. He's probably a lot like I was, he's just way more accurate. But, I think it goes with the coordinator, the people that are calling the plays, the head coach. What kind of player do they want? If you look at the Ravens and what they did with Lamar, they made a full switch from going away from Joe Flacco and going with Lamar and saying, we want to put an athlete back there, and then we'll work with him on throwing. We feel confident that we can teach him so many things that he hasn't learned yet. And, when you're all in, you have to be all in. You can't have a running quarterback and say, man, if we only had a pocket passer. Or you can't have a pocket passer and say, we need a running quarterback. It's just not how it works, and it's never going to be that way. So I think it really goes down to the teams and what they want and what the offensive coordinator is looking for. Yeah, you would love to have a Russell Wilson who can be a great hybrid, but they're few and far between. And so I think teams are really looking at, what can we take? Joe Burrow coming out, it's going to excite a lot of people. I think he's really good at being in the pocket, reading defenses, and then being able to run as well. But we know in the NFL, if you're a running quarterback, unless you have top-end speed, those guys are going to catch you, and they're going to hit you really hard, and then you really quit running.
Yeah, because everyone in the NFL is fast, even down to the 325-pound D lineman. He is quick.
Right, and you got guys with certain ability like a Patrick Mahomes, who's just a hybrid, is different. And Aaron Rodgers, they're just different kind of players. And when I grew up in the NFL, I was a pocket guy. That's how I grew up. That's how I always grew up. From college out of Tulsa, we spread the ball around. We threw it a lot, but I rarely left the pocket. It wasn't something that was emphasized. So I think the league has changed a little bit, but it still goes back to the kind of coordinator you want, the kind of person the head coach wants, and then what the owners want to see out there.
So you mentioned the hybrid quarterback. Taysom Hill of the New Orleans Saints just came out, and I love the confidence, said that he is a franchise quarterback and he should be paid as such. How do you feel about that? Because I love the confidence. I feel like Taysom Hill has shown that he is a very good football player, is a good jack of all trades, threw the ball a little and looked pretty good. Have you seen enough from Taysom Hill to say, I would stake my franchise on that guy?
Well, you have to think about it this way. If he plays like how he plays and goes and runs, which if he was your starting quarterback, he'd probably do a lot. There's a lot of injuries in that. He's a big, strong, tough guy. I love watching him play. I think he's an amazing football player. And, what is the reason he wants to go be a quarterback? Is it because of more money? Or, he may not be in the NFL long if he makes that switch. I don't know. I'm with you. I love his confidence. I love for him to go see. But, I think it's going to be hard for a team to go and make that choice. I think he's doing wonderful things where he is. And the Saints probably had every chance and were a little slighted on going to the Super Bowl this year. But it's going to be interesting to see where he lands and what happens to him. But he's an incredible athlete, incredible football player. And, I'm sure he feels like he can do a lot of the things that Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, other quarterbacks do. But until you prove it by throwing it 40 times every game, I don't know. That's hard for an OC to take that opportunity.
So you mentioned Ryan Fitzpatrick, one of your good buddies who, being a Jets fan, I enjoyed watching Fitz play. Fitzmagic was awesome on the Jets. And, he's considered a journeyman quarterback. I feel like yourself at a certain point after the Washington, you went to a few teams, you were considered a journeyman. And there's sometimes where, journeyman has a negative connotation, I think, at times, where I don't think it should. Because I feel like if you're a journeyman and you get a lot of starting spots, that means that you're talented. That means that you're a starting caliber quarterback. It has a lot to do with what you said, where you may have just not found that perfect coordinator fit. So how do you think NFL and the fans should look more at the journeyman quarterbacks?
Well, we see every year that when teams starters go out and they don't have a viable backup, they don't bode well in the NFL. Yep. And so one of the things when you're a journeyman, if you are a good player and you've started a bunch of games, that you can give that viability to that team. And the problem, like that Ryan and I think we both always had, is that we want to play. We're not in that league to go and sit and watch everybody. And I've struggled with that, saying I could have stayed somewhere and not moved my family, and I could have been a backup. But for me, the joy of it all was going out there and playing against 11 guys that want to rip your head off and playing in front of 80,000 people and getting the job done. Sometimes you come out on top and sometimes you don't. But, that was the struggle sometimes that I had is, okay, is it the stability of being in the same spot, getting paid a little less, or having that opportunity to go and prove yourself that you can do this? I've had a lot of ups and downs in this league, and, one of my things was always, I'm going to go prove myself. That coach may not think I can do it, but I know I can, so I'm going to go do it. And it's a little bit like what Taysom Hill's going through.
So I have to ask you about Fitz, because certain things about Fitz, and, I'm not afraid. If I have an opinion, I'm going to say it. And I loved watching Ryan Fitzpatrick play. He has the gunslinger mentality. He can try to make every single throw. But Fitz seems to be falling into the habit of, he has one fantastic year with the team, his first year on there, gets a nice fat contract. And I don't know if he starts to press or if he's so damn smart that he starts to outsmart himself sometimes. And it just seems like in the second year at some point, it falls off a cliff for him. And I don't know if it's all him. I don't know if it's a team. I don't know if he's kind of outsmarting himself. You talk to Fitz. I would love to have him on the show one time just to talk to him because he seems like an awesome guy. What do you see with Fitz that it seems to be this reoccurring pattern where he has a great season or a season and a half with the team, and then all of a sudden he'll get the starting job for good, and it'll eventually just go downhill? What's the correlation there?
Well, you got to remember that where we were drafted, the kind of label that's put on us is you don't get many opportunities. As long as you're playing well, they're fine with you. As soon as one or two bad things happen, they're moving on because they know there's going to be other guys coming down the pipe. Instead of understanding what your emotions are like, understanding they know your talent, they know you can make the plays, they've seen you win games, but the problem is that they're saying, oh, well, we can go just draft another 7th rounder, instead of saying, okay, we're going to put a lot of effort behind you to find out and work with you to see if we can make you into 3 or 4 years that the starting quarterback. Where, we've all seen guys, that fall off. You see guys get injured, you see guys get hurt, but when you're labeled as a journeyman or a backup, those things tend to get you cut or not re-signed. And I think a lot of that has happened with Fitz, and I see a lot of that happened in my career as well, where, Fitzy's just an amazing person. He's a wonderful guy to have on the team. Everybody loves him. And then all of a sudden a few mistakes happen and the team goes, oh, we can't have that and we can't have you on our team anymore. And then all of a sudden the relationship gets bad and you're wondering what happened, what I do. At some point, that's the label that we're stuck with. And so, I understand that as a fan, you see everything that Ryan goes through, but I can tell you stories about when he would come off to the bench in New York and had no support, and he had to figure things out on his own. And that's very tough to do.
Which is wild considering, I know we did have his downs in New York, but for all things considered, the fans, even when he was down, we still did love him. We wrote him because we're New York fans and we're nuts. But we did love, I'm never mad at a guy that had the confidence that Fitz had. And there are some throws where I looked at, and I think every quarterback, you could look at some throws and go, what the hell was that? But then there were times where he would take off and he would get a huge first down and change momentum. So I just wanted to pick your brain. And if you talk to Fitz next time, tell him this is an awesome show to come on.
Okay. I definitely will. And then the thing is that, Fitz and I both have the mentality that we can fit any throw in there. And, there's a term, they call them Charlie checkdown, but, that's not in our repertoire.
Thank God.
It is sometimes, but, I'd rather throw a 15-yard comeback or a dig or whatever you want to call it, trying to push the ball downfield than, let's dink and dunk. Although I've won games like that with Adrian Peterson where I just dropped back against the Packers and I threw to him about 4 times.
He's a different animal. He's a wide receiver out the backfield that can run everything over. Still,
right? Yeah, it's like when I watch the Cowboys play. When I watch
the Giants with Saquon is eventually going to do that
with Saquon, and I watch Christian McCaffrey. Like I'm putting them in passing routes. Like they're viable first options, not like a lot of. I watch some games and Zeke's not even touching the ball, and I'm going, okay, let's get him the ball. Let's put him on routes. I coached Ezekiel in high school. I know what he can do.
Well,
and I've seen him play in college.
You've played with some great running backs. You mentioned Adrian. You had Terry Allen with your time over in the Redskins, who I think is underrated and not as remembered as he should be because he was fantastic. And then you also played with Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown over in Miami. And speaking of guys that can catch out the backfield, holy cow, those two are two of the better guys catching out of the backfield. They were they had hands as good as any wide receiver in the league. So you definitely, I remember watching you. You would always take your chances down the field, but you were blessed with having those viable options out the backfield.
Yeah, and would I love to go back and do some things over? Of course. But, when you go out and you play hard and the goal is to put the ball in the end zone.
Hell yeah.
And, the mentality of saying, okay, we can get down the field 5 yards at a time gets pretty difficult.
And it's unfortunate that, you mentioned the journeyman label and everything, and not everyone gets all the opportunities that Jameis Winston has. And I'm not knocking Jameis. I'm a Florida State fan, and I love Jameis Winston. But, again, Jameis, if Fitz had the first 5 years of his career like Jameis Winston had, he might not be in the NFL anymore with all the interceptions that Jameis has thrown. So you have a point with all of the, where you're drafted has a lot to do with the opportunities that you get.
If you're drafted high, compared to if you come in to a team as a free agent and still not drafted high, it's a big difference. Teams look at you, ownership looks at you, everybody looks at you differently. But if you go back and look, when you look at guys like Steve Young, who played in the what was the league he was in? USFL for a long time before he went to the Niners, sat behind Joe Montana for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things don't really happen anymore.
No, it's rare. And, you could tell you're a podcast host because you just gave me my perfect segue. The XFL just happened this weekend, first week. Again, you being a former quarterback, I want to get your impression specifically on, first of all, did you watch the 4 games or any of the games this weekend?
Yeah, I watched most of them. I did interview Brian Cooper he's the president of the Houston Roughnecks.
Cool.
Not too long ago. And so I did watch Houston play. There's some coaches that I know in the league. Don't, know some players by name, but watch the games. I thought they were good games. I thought some of the rule changes were interesting. So it was, I thought it was rather fun. I think the hardest part for the XFL is just recognition. People don't know those players.
Yep.
People don't know them. There's no following, where you have people that have been following the Giants since the beginning of the NFL or the Packers. And there's no following like that. Even when you look at San Diego, the following for San Diego is minimal compared to some of the other big teams in the NFL. But I think the XFL will figure things out. There will also with their marketing and the way they brand and all those things, I think they'll engage fans more often. I think for the first weekend, it was pretty good, and you don't hear a lot of the rumors about how the AFL went under so fast. You don't hear a lot of those rumors. Seems like the players were pretty happy. They were treated well. They had good equipment, all that kind of stuff. I didn't really like how the balls looked, but it looked like they were very hard to throw. But it's all part of the game.
It is, and I wanted to ask you specifically because you definitely watch the games probably in a different lens because, playing the game for so long, it's kind of hard not to kind of look and dissect that defense, look at the formation, look at certain things that, normal people like me wouldn't see. So your impression, one of the things with the AAF that I saw was the offensive line play from the get-go was miserable. And it wasn't the fault of really the linemen. They were thrown in there. They didn't have a lot of cohesion, not a lot of time. The XFL gave their guys basically a year to get ready. These lines are together. I thought the line play was pretty damn good, and it allowed the quarterbacks to have some clean pockets for a lot of the games. What did you see from the line play and the quarterback play specifically? Because I feel like besides the monetary and the benefit side, if the offensive line play and quarterback play can hold up, this league can make it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I thought the line play was pretty good for the most part. Obviously, they really haven't hit, and they haven't conditioned their bodies. So this next game, I think it's going to be, guys are going to be sore like they haven't been sore before. And it's just like when you first or second week in the NFL, it's kind of sloppy. Guys don't really know, aren't used to each other. You can do whatever you want in practice, but until you do it in a game, it's a complete different scenario. So these guys will get better and better, but I did like what I saw from the line. And then the quarterback play, I thought it was off and on. Some teams were better than others. I thought the kid from Houston played really well. And then, I just think that they all got to study the film. They got to get in there. I don't know how all that's working. I know that that's a big priority in the NFL, that you got to go back in, watch yourself, watch your mistakes. It's one thing to understand the defense, but if you don't understand what you did wrong and know how to correct it, then you're never going to get better. So I think we'll be able to tell a lot more if there's an improvement in week 2 compared to week 1. But I thought for the most part, the games were enjoyable. The line did most of their jobs. They're going to miss some blitzes. They're going to, not pick up some things. But I liked how physical it was. I liked the run game, and guys were getting after it. And there was a little bit of excitement. I like when linemen, they get after the D-line. They get out. They're running downfield. It wasn't just guys standing around. So I thought it was a pretty good first week of the season.
Yep, I'm excited. And me and my brother do a show on the side called Cuesta Dos. It's a part of this umbrella. And we homered for the AAF, and it went under. So now we're homering for the XFL, and we're all on the Guardians bandwagon, being from New York, New Jersey area. So we're all in. We're now going to switch gears away from football completely, Gus, because you let me know again. We talked about your Pittsburgh fandom, and you're a hockey fan. and you're a Crosby fan, which could maybe have people listen to this more closer or turn it off, because it really depends on where you are with Sidney Crosby, because he is undoubtedly one of the greatest players of all time, still one of the best players in the league. To you, where would you rank Sid amongst the all-time NHL greats, the Gretzkys, the Orrs, and all those guys?
Well, I think he's definitely up there. When we've been so lucky in Pittsburgh, where we had Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. We've had a lot of players come through here. And I'm not even talking about all the guys that are top tier, but not the exceptional like they are. And Sidney, what I love about him and what I think most of Pittsburgh is so grateful for is his work ethic. His skills are just second to none of anybody in the league. He still makes incredible passes, sees the ice unbelievably. He can go down and get it. People don't push him around, even though he's not a super big guy. And he's just all about hockey. You don't see a lot of extracurriculars with him. He's about the team. He's about his teammates. He's about what's best for Pittsburgh Penguin hockey. And to me, that makes him one of the greatest ever.
You know, people get jealous of greatness, and I feel like that's where all the Sidney Crosby hate comes from. It was the same as the LeBron hate. It's very similar to even the Tom Brady hate. And I'm not like that because I like to appreciate greatness. I'm not going to lie, I'm a Devils and a Habs fan, a Canadiens fan. So for me, Crosby, you know, he rubs me the wrong way because he's on a team that, you know, I'm not a big fan of. But I respect the fact that he's an amazing player. And he's a once-in-a-generational player. And I'm going to be able to tell my kids one day, I got to see Sidney Crosby skate. Now, one of my favorite stats about him and one of the records he has, which I don't know if he still has it, but he probably should, is his record in juniors, where he has the most minutes of all time for fighting, because everyone would fight him just to keep him off the ice. I think he has like a single season record by like an astronomical amount, and he still set the records for goals and assists and points in juniors while getting into constant fights. And it wasn't any of his doing. People would just go fight him to get him off the ice. So I love that stat. And you've seen him fight a few times in the NHL when he's had to, just to not get pushed around. So he's not afraid to get tangled, even though he'd rather not. He'd rather go score.
Well, yeah, you know, he would rather go score. And I've been upset. Like, I watch a lot of Penguin games and watch them in the playoffs and things. And when teams are really roughhousing him, I always want his teammates just to come up and get them off of him. You know, they're going to put the big bruiser up against them and pester him all game and try to get under his skin. One of the great things that rarely happens, that somebody gets under his skin. But from my point of view, I'm always like, okay, I really want somebody to go in there and take care of that guy so Sid can go be Sid. You know, I have a great one. I've been a hockey fan for a long time. When I played for St. Louis, I got to know 3 hockey players really well: Keith Tkachuk, Doug Weight, and Billy Guerin.
Some of the best of all time. Jesus.
Yes. And so they've been good friends, and I've known them for a long time and used to go to a lot of games. So when Billy came to Pittsburgh, and we were still, I forget where, I think I was my last year at the Vikings. It might have been 2008. I think that's when they won the Cup, and that was Billy's last year. But anyway, so we came back home. I talked to Billy. I went down after a game, and then we partied. They won a game, and then I went back in. I brought one of my friends in, and we went into the locker room, and Sid gave me a stick for my daughter that he signed. And great guy, wonderful guy. And so we got this stick. My daughter was super excited. Obviously, everybody in Pittsburgh knows who he is. And so my kids they go to Pittsburgh Central Catholic, where they did before they went to college. Mm-hmm. And they take it into a class for show and tell, my 2 boys. And so, you know, time goes by, I'm not thinking of anything. And I go, hey, where's the Crosby stick? I always had it up here in the room, sitting here, and Gunnar and Gabe, they never told me, but they left it at school and somebody took it.
Oh no.
Yeah. So their sister was out a signed Sidney Crosby stick. She's still upset at them about it. And I said, well, why didn't you go back? Why didn't you tell me that day? We went and found it. They're like, well, we thought you'd be really mad. I'm like, no, we just want to find the stick. That's all. So we had a signed Sidney Crosby stick, but somebody else owns it right now in Pittsburgh.
Sid, if you're listening, get him another stick, man. His daughter wants another stick. He wants another stick.
Well, Sid's just a great guy.
Seems like
I've
it.
met him a few times, and he's just, those are the kind of guys. I mean, besides him being one of the best that's ever played, just the ultimate teammate, the ultimate person you want representing your team, all those things that you could ask for. And I don't know if Pittsburgh will get lucky enough after Sid retires if we're going to get somebody else, but I sure hope we do.
I kind of want to tell you guys to stop it because after Lemieux, Yager, Crosby, stop. You don't need, take a lull for a little bit because not only did you guys have Crosby throughout all this, you also had Malkin. No, enough. Malkin could have been the best player on every other team in the league at the time, but no, he's sitting there riding first and second line with Crosby. No, stop it, Pittsburgh. We're done with you guys.
Yeah. Well, at least we don't have Gritty, right?
Listen, Gritty's a legend, okay?
He is a legend.
That's fantastic. So go ahead.
No, I was going to make a joke, but I don't know if I should.
I mean, like you said, it's a podcast. FCC is not listening to this, and even if they are, they can't do anything.
Well, it's just funny that Gritty gets a charges pressed on him for assaulting a boy, but then gets off of it. I mean, that's like such a Philly thing. I mean, I played football in Philly many, many years, and it's like you better not wear the opposing team's colors or jerseys. I'm sure this kid had an opposing team jersey. I think Gritty just kind of gave him a little bop, but it's kind of funny how that all played out.
Honestly, I don't know if there's video, and I haven't looked, but just the image in my head of seeing Gritty run after and Superman punch the kid is, bad for the kid, but hilarious to think about. Just watching this waddling mascot, this freakish looking thing, go to wall off on a 13-year-old.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I mean, what was that kid thinking? Like this, what is this thing attacking me?
Well, apparently he bopped him first, and then Gritty just returned the favor.
Yeah. Well, we have a harmless penguin here in Pittsburgh. So
fun fact: penguins are my favorite animals, but I still don't like the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. So with that, that's going to conclude this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast. I had 15-year veteran quarterback Gus Frerotte with me. Gus, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I appreciate it, Alex. Best of luck with the podcast, and I just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to get the great people on, and the more people you can keep reaching out to, I think it's better and better it's going to be for you. And people can see my podcast at Huddle Up with Gus, and it's at Huddle Up with Gus anywhere you find us on any social media, and on radio.com.
Anywhere specifically people can find you on social media that you would like to give out, or are you a little more private with that?
No, it's just at Gus Frerotte. I'm not private at all. My kids keep yelling at me because I haven't been verified on Twitter yet, and I've been trying to work on it, but I don't know, man. They're god awful slow. So, but it's just at Gus Frerotte. I don't hide anything, and it's try to get as much love out there to my fans as I can.
That's awesome. And one of my buddies is a big Redskins fan. I told him I got you, and he's like, how the hell did that happen? So he'll be excited to listen to this one. But again, I'm Alex Cuesta, the host of the Sports Opinions podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Visit the Facebook page by searching Sports Opinions Podcast. And also, don't forget to, wherever you listen, give us a nice rating and review. It pushes us up the rating so then people can hear my awesome guests like Gus Frerotte. And emails. I want emails. People, tell me how I'm doing. If you want to be on the show, sportsopinions30@gmail.com. Shoot me emails. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to read them on this show on Cuesta Dos. It would just be a great time. So again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one, everybody.